They thought Mel Gibson would back down. What he said instead left the room in stunned silence. The room hums with anticipation. Not the loud, chaotic kind, but the quiet, crackling sort. The kind that signals something is about to happen. Rows of journalists sit shoulder to shoulder, their faces illuminated by the glow of laptop screens. The air is thick with the usual mix of cologne, coffee, and the lingering scent of warm plastic from camera equipment that's been running for hours. At the center of the room, a long table stretches across the stage, draped in black. Name cards sit in front of each chair. Producers, lead actors, the director, and at the center of it all, Mel Gibson. He's been here before. He's done hundreds of these, maybe thousands. The microphones, the flashing cameras, the predictable questions, they don't faze him. But something about this press conference feels different. Not in an obvious way. More like a low rumble in the distance, a shift in the air that only a few people in the room seem to notice. Mel adjusts the sleeve of his jacket, his fingers tapping lightly against the table. Not out of nervousness. He doesn't get nervous about these things. It's more like an unconscious rhythm, a habit formed over decades of sitting in rooms like this. The moderator, a thin man in a crisp suit, steps forward, clearing his throat into the mic. His voice is smooth, practiced. Thank you all for being here. We're excited to discuss the upcoming release of Resurrection, directed by Mel Gibson. We'll begin with some questions from the press. Immediately, hands shoot up. The moderator points to a woman in the front row. She introduces herself and asks about the film's inspiration. Mel leans forward slightly. It's a story I've wanted to tell for a long time. It's about sacrifice, redemption, things that matter, you know? A few nods from the audience. The next question comes from a man with glasses near the aisle. Mel, you've directed historical films before, but this one seems more personal. Would you say this film reflects your own beliefs? A small smile tugs at the corner of his mouth. Of course, I don't make films I don't believe in. That'd be a waste of time, wouldn't it? The crowd chuckles. The mood is light for now, but that feeling lingers, the quiet pull of something waiting to happen. The questions continue, some about the cast, others about the production process. Mel answers each one with the ease of a man who's done this 1,000 times before, but he knows what's coming. He can feel it because there's always one. A figure in the second row leans back in his chair. He hasn't spoken yet. He hasn't raised his hand, but Mel notices him. The way he's sitting, arms crossed, lips slightly curved in something that's not quite a smirk but close. He's waiting, studying. When the moderator calls on him, the man doesn't hesitate. He stands slowly, adjusting the microphone clipped to his shirt. The way he moves is deliberate, like someone setting up a shot before pulling the trigger. He clears his throat, lets the pause stretch a second too long, and then finally he speaks. But the moment the words leave his mouth, the entire room feels it. Something has shifted. The reporter doesn't jump straight into his question. No, he takes his time. He glances around the room first, almost as if he's making sure everyone is watching, making sure the cameras are rolling. Then he exhales dramatically, shifting his stance, one hand resting in his pocket. There's something calculated about the way he does it, something just a little too rehearsed. He lifts the microphone to his mouth, and when he speaks, his voice is calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that doesn't come from respect but from someone who enjoys setting traps. Mr. Gibson, you've been vocal about your faith for years. Some would say stubbornly so. He pauses, giving the words room to land. The smirk on his lips is subtle, but it's there. A few reporters shift in their seats. Some look down at their notes, pretending to be busy, while others lean forward, sensing what's about to happen. The reporter continues, but in today's world, isn't Christianity becoming outdated? Isn't it, in many ways, divisive? With everything happening globally, progress, inclusivity, people moving past old traditions, don't you think it's time to let go of something that has caused so much conflict throughout history? He sits back, satisfied. The question isn't just a question. It's a statement wrapped in bait. The room is silent. A tense, expectant silence. The kind that hangs heavy in the air. It's the kind of silence that happens right before impact, right before something breaks. Mel doesn't react immediately. He doesn't scoff. He doesn't roll his eyes. He doesn't rush to defend himself. Instead, he just watches for a second. He tilts his head slightly, studying the man in front of him the way a seasoned fighter sizes up an opponent before throwing the first punch. The room holds its breath. Everyone knows Mel Gibson. They know his history, his temper. The media has written about it for years, turned it into headlines, sold stories off it. They've seen him react before. Fire for fire, sharp-tongued, raw, unfiltered. They're expecting that version of him now. They're expecting him to take the bait. But he doesn't. Instead, he does something far more unsettling. He smiles. Not the kind of smile you put on for press conferences. Not the polite, media-trained expression used to smooth over awkward moments. No, this smile is slow, calculated, the kind of smile that makes people lean in because they know something is coming. He picks up his water bottle, unscrews the cap, takes a deliberate sip, then sets it down again. And when he finally speaks, his voice is steady, even deceptively calm. But his answer isn't what anyone expects, and when he says it, the room, every single person in it, feels the weight of his words. Mel lets the silence stretch a second longer, just enough for the tension to settle in. His fingers tap the side of his water bottle once, twice, before he finally looks up, meeting the reporter's gaze head-on. You know, he starts, his voice even measured. I've been in this business a long time, long enough to recognize when a question isn't really a question at all. The smirk on the reporter's face falters just a little. Mel leans forward slightly, resting his forearms on the table. His tone isn't defensive, but there's a weight behind it. You didn't ask me that because you're curious. You asked me that because you wanted a reaction, maybe even a headline. But let's talk about it since you brought it up. A few heads turn. Some reporters shift in their seats, sensing something rare. Gibson isn't dodging the question. He's taking it apart piece by piece. He exhales, his expression unreadable. You say Christianity is outdated. Compared to what? The words land hard. The room is silent. The reporter doesn't answer. So Mel continues, greed? Corruption? The idea that nothing matters unless it serves our immediate gratification? Because that's what modern thinking has turned into, an obsession with self, with tearing things down just because they've been around too long. We like to call it progress, but half the time it's just destruction with better branding. A murmur ripples through the room. Some journalists exchange glances. Others scribble furiously in their notepads. The cameras keep rolling. Mel shifts in his chair, but his gaze never wavers. Let me ask you something, he continues. When was the last time you saw someone ridiculed for being Buddhist, Muslim, Jewish? People don't do it because they know it's offensive. But Christianity? Fair game. It's open season and no one bats an eye. You can mock it, drag it through the mud, call it a relic from the past, and you'll still get a pat on the back for being brave. But what's brave about kicking something people already love to hate? The reporter opens his mouth, maybe to interject, maybe to defend himself, but Mel isn't done. You say Christianity is divisive. I say people are divisive, always have been, always will be. The world doesn't turn on faith. It turns on people's choices. And people have been using everything, race, politics, religion, to divide each other for centuries. Christianity isn't the problem. People are. And blaming faith for human failure is just a lazy way to avoid looking in the mirror. The weight of his words presses against the room. The tension is no longer just between Mel and the reporter. It's in the air itself. It's on the notepads of journalists who suddenly realize they're documenting something that won't be forgotten by morning. It's in the quiet hum of cameras still recording, catching every flicker of emotion, every shift of body language. Mel exhales, then leans back. He picks up his water bottle again, twisting the cap off. So if my faith offends you, that's not really my problem, is it? The reporter shifts in his seat. He wasn't expecting this. He was expecting rage, defensiveness, maybe even an argument he could spin into a controversy. Instead, he got something worse. The truth delivered with absolute clarity. And the room, every journalist, every camera operator, every silent observer, knows they just witnessed something that won't be forgotten. But outside this press room, the real firestorm is just beginning. It starts with a single clip. Someone in the audience, probably a journalist, uploads the exchange to Twitter. Just a 2-minute snippet of Mel Gibson's response. No context, no edits, just his voice cutting through the tension with sharp, unwavering words. And within minutes, it explodes. By the time the press conference ends, the internet is on fire. The headlines come first, rolling in like waves, each one spinning the moment in a different direction. Mel Gibson's bold defense of Christianity goes viral. Mel Gibson slams reporter in fiery exchange. Watch his brutal response. Mel Gibson's controversial rant, Hollywood reacts. Then come the reactions. Twitter is a battlefield. Supporters call him a fearless truth-teller, praising his refusal to back down. Clips circulate with captions like, "Finally," someone says it out loud, and Mel Gibson just did what no one in Hollywood dares to do. On the other side, the outrage machine kicks into full gear. Blue-check journalists dissect his words, calling them dangerous, outdated, inflammatory. Think pieces flood in. Some claim his comments are proof that he's out of touch with modern society. Others suggest he's intentionally courting controversy to stay relevant. Late-night talk show hosts waste no time. Within hours, his face is plastered across monologues. They play clips of his response, chopping them up for comedic effect, adding canned laughter, twisting his words into easy punchlines. Wow, Mel Gibson defending Christianity? Who could have seen that coming? I mean, next you'll tell me water is wet. The audience laughs. The host smirks, flipping through his cue cards. Another segment, another target. Meanwhile, major media outlets call in experts to analyze his statement. News panels break down the implications of his words. One guest calls it another example of Hollywood's complicated relationship with faith. Another argues that Gibson is a relic of an era that no longer exists. The film studio behind his latest project scrambles to put out a statement. They don't distance themselves entirely, too risky, but they choose their words carefully. We recognize that Mr. Gibson's views are his own. We remain committed to fostering an inclusive and diverse environment for all perspectives. Translation: they don't want to get involved. But it doesn't stop there. Brands that once stood proudly beside him suddenly hesitate. A major endorsement deal, one he's had for years, reevaluates their relationship with him. A scheduled appearance on a popular morning show is quietly canceled. The weight of his words is spreading, reaching places even he didn't anticipate. But while Hollywood and the media do their best to frame the story, something else is happening. Something they didn't expect. The support isn't just coming from the usual places. A church in Texas plays the clip during Sunday service. A pastor in Florida calls it one of the boldest moments of faith from a public figure in years. Across small towns in America, people are talking not about controversy but about conviction, about what it means to believe in something and not back down. Emails flood into his team's inbox. Messages from ordinary people, from parents, from pastors, from students. Thank you for standing up. I thought I was alone in feeling this way. You don't know how much this meant to me, but for every person who supports him, there are others sharpening their knives, waiting for their turn to strike. And the real battle hasn't even begun yet. Mel's phone won't stop buzzing. It's been 2 days since the press conference, and the world outside hasn't calmed down. If anything, the storm is getting stronger. Calls, messages, emails, some supportive, some not. His agent has left 3 voicemails, each one sounding more strained than the last. The latest one is blunt. Mel, listen, I need you to call me back. This is getting bigger than expected. Some studios are getting nervous. Call me now. He doesn't call back. Not yet. Instead, he's standing on his patio, staring out at the horizon. The sun is starting to set, streaks of gold and burnt orange cutting across the sky. It's quiet out here, peaceful. But he knows it won't last because he's been here before. This isn't the first time the media has put a target on his back. He's made mistakes, and they've made sure no one forgets them. But this is different. This isn't about an outburst caught on tape or a scandal or something taken out of context. This is about conviction, and Hollywood doesn't like people with conviction. His phone rings again. He lets it go to voicemail. Then a text pops up. He sighs. He already knows what they're going to say. They'll tell him he needs to clarify his statement, that he should soften his stance to appease both sides, that maybe an apology, not an actual apology, just something that sounds like one, might help smooth things over. But he's not interested. A knock on the door pulls him out of his thoughts. It's his assistant holding an envelope. This came for you. No return address. Mel takes it, the paper thick in his hands. He pulls out a small note, handwritten. The ink slightly smudged. Thank you for not backing down. No name, no explanation, just those 6 words. He exhales, rubbing his thumb over the letters because this is why he spoke. Not for headlines, not for debate, but because there are people out there who needed to hear it. The media keeps calling it controversial, but since when is faith controversial? Since when is believing in something a crime? Another text comes in, this time from his agent. I just got off the phone with the studio. They're worried about backlash. They might delay the film's release. We need to talk. Mel closes his eyes for a moment. He should have seen this coming. It doesn't matter how much money his movies have made. It doesn't matter that audiences love his work. In this industry, the moment you stop playing by their rules, you become a liability. And liability gets you erased. His assistant hesitates. Do you want me to schedule a statement? He shakes his head. No. Are you sure? The studio. I said no. Because here's the thing about truth. It doesn't need constant defense. It stands on its own. And no amount of late-night jokes, think pieces, or Twitter outrage will change what's already been said. But while Hollywood wrestles with the fallout, something unexpected is happening. People are listening. A small-town newspaper in Indiana runs a column titled, Why Mel Gibson's Words Matter. A professor in Tennessee writes an op-ed about the cost of conviction in a culture that silences dissent. And in places no one is paying attention to, churches, community halls, living rooms, conversations are happening. Because this was never about Mel Gibson. This was about something bigger. And for the first time in a long time, people are starting to realize it. The headlines keep changing. The outrage machine moves on. A new scandal, a new controversy, a new target. But this moment, it doesn't just disappear because this was never about Mel Gibson. It was about something bigger, something deeper. It was about what happens when you stand for something in a world that demands you stay silent. It was about the cost of conviction, the weight of truth, and the choice we all face sooner or later. Do you back down, or do you hold your ground? And that question, it isn't just for celebrities. It's for you. Because at some point in your life, you'll find yourself in a moment like this. Maybe not in front of cameras, maybe not in the middle of a viral storm, but it will happen. It could be in a conversation with friends, a discussion at work, a post online. Someone will challenge what you believe not out of curiosity, but to test you to see if you'll bend. And in that moment, you'll have a choice. Do you go along with the crowd? Keep your head down? Stay quiet to avoid trouble? Or do you stand? Mel Gibson didn't give that answer to win people over. He didn't say it for applause or validation. He said it because it was true. And truth doesn't need permission to be spoken. But truth comes with a price, and the reason so many people stay silent is because they're afraid of that price. They're afraid of losing approval, losing opportunities, losing comfort. And yet, what's the alternative? Living in fear, staying quiet, knowing that deep down you're betraying what you really believe. Because here's the thing, conviction isn't just about what you say. It's about who you are. It's about whether you're the kind of person who stands by your principles, even when it costs you, even when it makes people uncomfortable, even when it would be so much easier to just nod along and keep the peace. And that's what the world is missing today. Not more opinions, not more noise, not more outrage, but people who are willing to stand. People who don't apologize for believing in something. People who refuse to be bullied into silence. Because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And the next time the world tells you to sit down, to be quiet, to go along with whatever is trending, ask yourself, is what I believe worth the cost? Because the truth, the real cost, isn't in speaking up, it's in staying silent.